Welcome to this special panel discussion where we're talking about disruption and what it's doing to Indian information technology companies and really what lies ahead. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us. So, Mr. Gurnani, I mean, you're, I guess, being disrupted and being the disruptor. So you're disrupting in the financial services industry where in some ways people would have never thought you to play a role in. And you're also being disrupted as an information technology company.
I mean, guess that is the order of the day. I mean, the challenge is that are you the disruptor or are you waiting to be disrupted? And the reality is that all of us are taking some future bets on where we would like to be the disruptors. Now, for example, at Tech Mahindra, we said we are not going to be just a technology provider to the payment banks. We will participate in a digital bank. We will become a hybrid player. We will become a brick and a click player. Now, clearly, India is a market which, because of its size, because of its complexity, because of its advantages and disadvantages, you will have a different experience which will probably make us ready to be a more active enabler to the financial companies or the banks around the world. Now, similarly, yes, you are dead right. I mean, it is healthcare. I mean, we are now leveraging our EMRI experience. At EMRI, we are supporting emergency services for about 400 million people. Now, when you looked at that experience and we started looking at that experience, can it be coupled with all the wearable devices, coupled with the Skype availability, can I now start a remote health monitoring system? If I can do a remote health monitoring system, so now we are working with the Manipal Hospital Group, and we are now looking at launching a remote health monitoring system. So my point out here is that every industry is up for a change, and we want to be part of the change.
Okay. So I just wanted to ask you, Mr. Gurnani, you talked about being a disruptor and also getting disrupted, at times. Where do you think that this particular pressure of disruption coming from? We understood that it could self-originate from the technology providers, but how much of it is perhaps even driven by the consumer requirements, the awareness and the consciousness that the consumer expects in terms of better delivery, better servicing and all of that? How much of it is coming from the consumer itself?
Go back into the basics of definition of a disruption. It's always better cost, better delivery,
yes.
Better cycle time, and so on and so forth, better product and a better. So it's not that Uber invented a new industry. It's not an Airbnb invented a new industry. I mean, there was always a site called luxury homes. There was always a site called luxury flats. There was always a site called temp flats. I mean, it was always available. It is just that they became a larger aggregator and they created a much bigger industry at a much better price points with a much better transparency. So what I'm trying to make a point out here is that yes, disruption can be economic driven. If disruption can be technology driven, disruption can be cost driven, disruption can be product features driven. Now, out here, for example, auto industry, since you are part of that auto industry, I mean, the reality is that the reality is people, when they look at a driverless car, they're no longer looking at a configuration of two people sitting in the front and two people sitting at the back. Now they're saying it's a living room configuration. If it is a living room configuration, are interiors more important than the car? And if interiors are going to be more important than the car, then should a technology company like mine collaborate with an interior designer company? And if yes, then my Pininfarina collaboration is good.
Sure.
Nitin, you want to come in here?
Yeah, I think the fundamental premise of where this disruption is coming from is actually what we call the digital native consumer. I think the old model of relationship-based corporate, enterprise, customer to enterprise relationship model is actually being broken right now, because all a customer is now today looking for is convenience and price over anything else. So the digital native consumer is clearly in the middle of all this disruption, and that's being powered by the congruence of all the technologies that we've used for the last 25 years, from cell phone to internet to mobile commerce. So a number of points that are being made clearly point in the direction that enterprises, and typical large global enterprises, history going back 50 to 150 or 200 years, I think they're finding it difficult to meet the demands that are being put on them by this new digital native consumer, because everything about their business has to change and evolve. And hence, while the focus is on the fintech startup or the insurance tech startup, the real rub for an industry like ours really is, how do you create the capability that helps your customers that are typically large global enterprises to navigate this two-speed world. I mean, they have great brands, they have great products, they have great set of customers, they have market share, they have money, but all the focus is going on this digital speed world. So how can they actually migrate more and more? Think about, I mean, let's talk about payments, right? We just talked about the payment banks, right? So if you look at the top 10 payment companies in the world, still have 98% of the market share or 97% of the market share, right? And Noshir probably know the numbers better. So while the focus is all on the disruptors, and we had somebody from Square here, you look at PayPal, you look at Apple Pay, issue really is, do you think the large payment companies have the capability to provide the same level of service and the products to their captive user base? If you think the answer is yes, then how do you actually empower them to do that, and do that in digital time versus doing it in 20 years? So I think for companies like ours, that's the biggest opportunity, that how do you empower your customers to navigate this two-speed world of continuing to focus on their core business and navigating more and more functionality and creating a fully digital enterprise by modernizing front to back.
I want to throw in quickly on how does it look from the financial services world, where we see equal amount of disruption, particularly when it comes to consumer-facing products?
I think in financial industries, perhaps as much as in any other industry, this entire disruption is happening only because of the speed of doing the business. Payment gateways and the payment interfaces are one example. The other example is the way your clients are actually interacting on the entire platform to avail of all the services. So you look at the bank for not only for the ATM services or for transfer of funds from one place to another, but even if you look at the brokerage industry, you will see that the platform is actually now end-to-end. There is no human interface that is necessary from the point of view of onboarding the client to an actual experience of even accessing a completely remote marketplace. And even whether it is advisory, whether it is wealth management, whether it is transactional, whether it is payment, all aspects of a financial services industry can now be provided in a manner which is completely seamless, and it is all enabled by the technology. And in that respect, it is disruptive to the legacy business of human interface, client relationship, the high touch and high relationship type of models that we have always worked on.
Right. So, Noshir, one of the discussions we were having earlier was about automation, and to what extent will automation kill jobs? And your own study talks about a 40% potential reduction in jobs only with existing technology. So take us through how this could actually play out, and should people be worried?
Sure. Just before that, I'll go back to Vineet's point a little bit on what's happening with the consumer. I think one thing that actually has changed, and this has changed across industries, is the rate of adoption of change by the consumer. Mm-hmm. Now, historically, and CP and I used to have this running interesting conversation about would a wearable stop you from having the next gulab jamun, right? Mm. And I remember we had this about 18 months ago, and lo and behold, outside your booth here, Goki is launched, right? And yes. Vishal's entire thesis, whether right or wrong will be proven, is that actually the hardware doesn't matter, the service matters, and if I can actually put a coach that links to you one-on-one, maybe I can influence you far faster than just having a wearable pinging you on the wrist not to eat whatever you're about to eat, right? So the rate of change of the consumer is actually being accelerated, and it's the fastest that I've ever seen it, at least in my working life. To come back to your question about automation, I think there's no question. We have gone through years. In fact, we were talking about a famous person from this industry in 1979 saying, I don't actually think I want to get into the BPO, that at that time was called BPO, because what is BPO today will be IT tomorrow, right? And so this notion of actually automation, whether you use technology, whether you use robotics, deep learning, artificial intelligence, has always come on the back of existing jobs. So people look at a profession, a job, and say, how can I do it better? To CP's point, anything can be done better. So that will hoover up, and whether it's 40% of the existing jobs. The question that's really interesting is, will it actually create new jobs that the human mind will still be more proficient at than the machine? And that honestly is up for grabs.
Right. I think that's a question, Mr. Gurnani, people are asking. So one is my job safe? Secondly, if I were to reskill myself, how do I do it, or can I do it? And thirdly, will there be enough capacity at all in the information technology space, at least as we know it today?
So again, first is to illustrate the consumer behavior part. I mean, I have actually seen one person talking to the ATM machine and saying, "Are you stupid? I've come here 20 times and you want me to tell you
my PIN.
What is my language, I mean English or whatever." I mean, now think about it.
Yeah.
This is
Yes.
machine which is supposed to be learning, which is supposed to deep learning. I mean, I need to use the right words, and it doesn't know. Same thing. I mean, I heard this guy and I was talking to the Google, and talking to Google means talking to my machine, and asking them, "Yes, I'm in Italy, but I don't know Italian. Why don't you understand this? You've been interacting with me. Why have you always first give me the whole page in Italian, then you say, can you translate it to English? You want to translate it to English? Yeah, no, damn it. I mean, yeah. So machines will have to learn. That is a fundamental point. And there are a lot of things that we do intuitively. I think that is where the gap between man and machine is. The fact is that, as they say, machines will eventually have the knowledge, but the wisdom will remain with the man. Right? So the fundamental question is that it is not new. To me, this is evolution, and we have seen it in our lifetimes. Nothing that, I mean, we all forgot the address books. All of us used to remember 100 phone numbers. I mean, I challenge you to remember 20 now. So again, because that job was being done efficiently by somebody else. Now, similarly, we have seen this evolution happen every day. It's happening in our lifetimes. It is happening in front of us. Now, the rate of change, yes, it is accelerated. Yes, that in this forum today, you have at least 3 or 4 companies which are now talking expert systems. You probably had one last year. That itself tells you that there is a proliferation which is much, much higher. And I will disagree that with Noshir when he says 40% jobs. Frankly, I think it could be 60%. It could be as high as 65%. Now the second question is, what happens to that skill? And will that skill change according to the time? I think that's a responsibility of us as leaders. The fact is, our IT company will become a DT company, and DT, you guys will call it as a digital technology. I will call it as a data technology company. And now somebody, if it is able to, and my examples earlier was that data is available, you need to interpret it. You need to be able to use it properly. And if you use it for the consumer, you use it for the business, then you are rightly skilled. Now, whether you are skilled in data, or you're skilled in domain, you're skilled in business, or you're skilled in technology, that will continuously evolve.
Nitin, I wanted to ask you here. Noshir talked about the faster and the the increased rate of adoption from the consumer side, because he's asking for more in terms of efficient delivery. How different is the adoption of the new technology or the new way of servicing the customer from the service provider or the product provider itself? Are they adopting to the new technologies? Because one of the things that it's coming out very clearly is that the basic customer need or requirement is pretty much the same. It is just the way you are delivering now, because there was always a requirement for a cab. Uber comes in and it just does it in a different way, but the need was the same. Now, how many of the old legacy companies realize this, and will there be new winners now?
Yes and no, but I think, yes, the basic needs are the same, but the true inventors or innovators will actually carve out new needs that people didn't know existed. Right? We didn't know that there used to be a need for a device that will do everything for us. If you look at the smartphone today, it's actually 20, maybe 25 devices from 25 years ago rolled into one. From Walkman to the camera to actual telephone to GPS. I mean, you just name it. So there are 25 different alarm clock. We also used to have a Palm Pilot, right, to do everything else. So issue really is, so yes, the basic needs haven't changed, but the way they are transformed and the way you evolve new needs is higher today than ever before. And to Noshir's point, one is the rate of adoption is high, but you have to understand why the rate of adoption is high. The rate of adoption is high for 2 reasons. One, congruence of technologies that have been around for 20, 25 years. I mean, Moore's law is still valid today. But now it's at an inflection point that it's actually starting, by 2018, a computer will have more computing power than a human brain. Right? Now that's a significant pivot point for use of AI and cognitive and all the right words that CP calls it, right? But there is a real reason why that's happening. You know, we talked about exponential technology. So look at sensors, GPS chips. It's really the congruence that is causing the bigger disruption today than it did over the last 25 years. So yes, there will always be basic needs, but there'll always be a new way to deliver it. There will always be a new way to open up new needs. What we have to do, since we service the enterprise 2,000 customers or 500, depending on what position you play in, if you don't keep up with helping them make that shift, or if you don't have a foothold in what these new technologies can actually enable, then obviously we will become obsolete. I give a lot of credit to the industry for making a few pivots, right? Keep in mind, 1975, 1985, it was all about buying staff. Then it became capacity, then it became services, then it became outcomes, and now really it is transformation. So I think as the needs have evolved, the industry has also evolved and will continue to do that. But the short point here is, and whether it is automation, whether it is disruption, it's nothing new. The rate of pace is faster because technology has actually changed much faster.
Right. So, Mr. Gurnani, you talked about digital and data. So, can you plan for digital? I mean, this is more a leadership question, which I'm going to pose to everyone. But can you plan for digital? And is it? Can you plan 1 month ahead? Can you plan 3 years ahead? How does one bring it into a leadership framework in an IT organization or an organization?
I think again, everybody will use their own frameworks till McKinsey gives you wave 1, wave 2, wave 3, right? I mean,
Horizon 1, Horizon 2,
Horizon or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
CP is very deep.
Right. So let's say the age-old, and Vineet will relate to this because banking has always worked on a framework which is run the bank, change the bank, or transform the bank. Right? Now, put this into any enterprise, any unit, any business. The reality is for IT providers like us, that is where we came in. We came in that category more often than not and run. Sometimes we participated in the change, but we never really part of transformation. Now, the moment that industry is being challenged by a startup, the startup could be in Bangalore or in Israel or Ireland or a US. Now suddenly there is a boardroom which is now saying, I need a transformation. Now I'll give you an example. One day I'm on a call with a client and we were been discussing with the CIO a customer experience management solution. And suddenly the CIO jumps in and says, oh, that requirement is no longer there. My chief sales officer has now already engaged with the digital agency and the customer experience management is being driven by the chief sales officer, which is unusual in our industry because normally you have CRMs, customer experience, all that coming in through the CIO's office. But the reality is that the boundaries internally within the companies that our clients itself are getting blurred. So will I need to become a bimodal company or a trimodal company or a multimodal company to be able to address it? That's the question number one. Number two, do I really connect the data points? That's why I use the word, is it digital or is it data? So that is the second point. And the third reason I would like to say is that if I genuinely want to be relevant, then I have no choice but to be multinodal, and I need to be able to address it to the sales officer, to the marketing officer, to the CFO, CEO, and I need to be understood that I can play a role in all the three frames, and those three frames or framework or strawman, whatever you want to call it, is run, change, and transform.
Noshir, I want to just step in here and ask you, because I think McKinsey sits on both sides. We talked about the consumer, we talked about the technology providers, and I want to talk about the Indian IT industry, which has been the competitive national advantage for India. How much of the transformation and adoption of these new requirements or the innovative solutions to the legacy product providers, are Indian IT companies now ready with? Are we seeing a shift in terms of the new IT providers from India who could be the winners of tomorrow, and how much of rigidity or inertia you are seeing in the very large Indian IT corporations to recognize this entire change that is happening from the customer side or from the technology customer side?
Well, this industry has always surprised us for 17 years, right? And I think, if you go back to this time last year, and I remember the CP and I were on a similar panel in the plenary session, and we talked about the fact, the shrinkage, right, of the legacy and the uptake of the digital world. It was met with some skepticism. You really believe 15 to 25% of the industry in its core is actually going to shrink in the next 3 to 4 years? Maybe, maybe not. Fast forward to this year, and Nitin will say this, we were having a conversation around the table, right? I don't think there's a doubt if anyone, again, has said, you got your numbers wrong, because it's actually not 15 to 25, it's more. And it's not 3 to 4 years, it's actually faster, right? So number one, I think, is the recognition there. It's absolutely there because our customers are saying it to us loud and clear. Secondly, are we actually going and doing what CP talked about, which is disrupting our own business? I think we are, right? In fact, I think if you look at the Indian providers or the India-centric companies or the global IT services companies, they are actually, in many cases, going ahead and proactively asking the customers, maybe not their customers, maybe their competitors' customers, to say, look, don't spend so much, because that's history, that's legacy, right? If you're going to compete with a payments bank, you better have your product available to the customer at a click, right? And so they're actually forcing the disruption, or many times providing the insight for the disruption, right, to their customers. And in order to do that, you have to actually be willing to disrupt a very large portion of your own business. Sure. Right? So I actually see this, in fact, accelerating dramatically in the last 12 months. Even when we came out 12 months ago, most people met it with skepticism. Today, I'd say, most people are already saying, okay, what's the next thing we got to actually worry about?
So in some ways, you've answered the previous question, that there is the leadership capability to take on challenges and of a very fundamental sort is pretty strong and pretty able and capable.
I think it's very clear because, not only the leadership capability, remember, the one thing that will, when every other commodity gets into surplus in the world, or seemingly surplus in the world, the one, I wouldn't say it's a commodity, but one resource which has always been in short supply is good engineering and design talent. Okay, and that is going through the roof. If you look even at the US statistics, right, the shortage on that is actually going to go up, right? And which country has been blessed with this talent pool, right? So whether it's the fact that there is no alternative, or whether it's the fact that we are the disruptors, or whether it's the fact that we have leaders in this industry who've seen that and coming, I think we've moved faster than actually I would have actually imagined.
Right. So, Mr. Gurnani, a lot of people are now saying that design and empathy are some of the key things. Creativity, design, empathy are the things that information technology companies should be arming themselves with as attributes or skills. So, how ready are we for this change? I mean, considering that most skill acquisition in the past has been engineers, people with math capability, but the market seems to be asking for more.
Again, on market, I still say whatever changes we are talking about, their evolution and they've been happening. It's not an on-off switch that just because the calendar year 2016 started, something has started. You saw it in your lifetimes, that music industry, I mean, do you think the content has gone away? The content production is only higher. It's only the content delivery has changed, the content monetization has changed. You may say that labels disappeared, companies disappeared. And that's going to be the same for any industry, including IT industry. The point is, some of us will recognize the change, some of us will not. It's not that, overall as an industry, we have grown, but there have always been people who have done better and who have done better during the change. So my personal feeling is that every company, and we can all go back and relate to the industries. In telecom, we have seen people, telcos, traditional telcos, buying rights to the English Premier League. Is that a telco business? I mean, I was talking to the Telstra CEO yesterday. I mean, he is working for the remote healthcare management system. They bought a hospital information systems company in Chennai. Now, the indication is that telcos are changing. That's the point I'm trying to make. And similarly, if an IT company responds to it, so when a Philips become a managed services company, now they're becoming a managed healthcare services company. They will become managed imaging services company. Now, the question is, as an IT company, do we realize what are our niches? Will we change our business models? Because clearly that means is a GE or a Philips will make an upfront investment and charge on pay-per-use. And if we are going to make those changes, then we will come out as winners. If we choose not to, then we will be part of history.
Right. So, Nitin, do you want to come in on a slightly different point? So do you use technology to solve existing problems, or do you use technology to look for new problems?
I think the answer is both, because unless you do both, you'll not be in business. Your customers won't be in business, right? So going back to what Noshir was saying, if 30 to 40% of the spend is going to squeeze in your run the bank, run the business side of the fence, you have to be able to do that. Otherwise, nobody has infinite, even startups don't have infinite capital. So the most efficient use will always be do what you do today in a much better way and use efficient technology to kind of get ready for tomorrow. And that's the holy grail, right? How do you ride this virtuous cycle of being more efficient on the core systems and being more advanced on the digital or the future systems, and can you create a good correlation between these two? Right. And the successful companies, I mean, we talked about Telstra, we've talked about a number of other market-leading names that are actually making this shift, and they're making it right in front of us. Successful of the ones will really be the ones who are able to ride out this bimodal, multimodal game. And it's actually, the one thing that I'll tell you is it's faster than we all imagine, and it's probably because of the exponentiality in the technologies that are underlying. And I think that's something if we just have to continue to accept. Right. So I'll just go back to one other example, right? We talked about, for example, the financial services industry. When did the disruption of the broking industry begin? It began when you started disintermediating humans with computers in 1994, 95. It's not last 5 years, it's actually 20 years ago. But the rate of pace of change has actually gone up because of availability of technology in your handheld device. So what used to be a 2% commission market worldwide, by the way, is you're lucky if you get 5 basis points today. Zero. That's exponentiality.
Zero it is.
So I think that's exponentiality. So what started 20 years ago has accelerated much faster.
New ways to monetize your service.
It's about data. It's about analytics. It's not about commission, because anything that had that fat layer of intermediation is the first one to get disrupted because of transparency and openness.
Absolutely.
Right. So let's talk about, as we sum up and wind up, I mean, what's the future looking like? And I really mean not a switch on, switch off moment, but what are we transitioning to in the next year or so? And stuff that people watching this should be looking out for, whether individually or as organizations. Noshir, do you want to start first?
So I think two things that I hope for. Number one, I do hope that India continues to be, India and India's talent continues to be the center of much of this revolution. And I think we can be. We have an opportunity, and we have, if anything, an opportunity to become more central, to actually the changes that are happening, in industries that are far beyond us, right? Yeah. I mean, CP talked about the fact that, we're actually now a payments bank, right? Or a large owner of a payments bank, right? And Nitin, similarly, in terms of the customer segments that you're going into and what you're actually doing to change their businesses. So I think companies and India per se will actually become far more central to the global economy and to changes in the global economy. My second hope or aspiration would be that actually this starts changing India, right? And as we look around us, we see a huge opportunity in this country to deploy technology to solve so many problems. In fact, our own estimates suggest that 20 to 30% of India's GDP growth could actually be enabled by technology in the next 10 years. Mm-hmm. That's a single largest factor. It's more than manufacturing today, right? So when we think about the opportunities globally, as many of us serve that industry, I would love it to actually change India as well.
Vineet, how do you see I mean, what does the future look to you like? And I'm really talking about the near future in the financial service space, consumer contact.
No, I think one of the things that is coming out very clearly is that the customer experience and the customer satisfaction and the transparency with which the customer will be able to avail of the services is going to be completely unprecedented. The economics of partaking that service or product is going to come down substantially. Third, because of the automation versus human interface that we have talked about, more and more of the human mind or the capabilities and skill sets are going to be used for doing something completely different. You talked about the wisdom and the knowledge, and that is exactly where the innovation, the wisdom, and the use of changing the world around yourself is going to be centered. And finally, I believe that this is going to become a lot more shared economy kind of a concept than the industry segments with which we have looked at businesses and economies traditionally. So the interface that we have seen between technology, automobile, insurance, financial, I think it is going to become so much more seamless, and that it is going to be so much more interconnected than ever before.
Right. Nitin?
I think it's actually a very exciting time to be in part of this revolution, evolution, whatever we call it. And at the same time, I think the business opportunity is humongous, because there is billions of dollars worth of investment and spending that's required for this transformation. Whether the new guys do it or the legacy guys do it, either which ways you look at it.
Do you see any near-term pain?
Pain is always there when there are times of pivot, but I think the pain can be masked by all the excitement. And if you make the right decisions, if you're able to take some bold moves, make some bold moves, I think the industry as a whole will only gain market share over the next 5, 7, 10 years. I mean, as far as you can see it.
Okay, Mr. Gurnani, last word.
I can only say that everybody has said, I agree, and which is unusual. But if at all there is anything that I would like people in my company and people in my vicinity to follow, is number one is break all barriers. There are no barriers, whether it is not in terms of vertical, not in terms of domain, not in terms of horizontal. I mean, clearly we are now looking at individual being more ambidextrous and firms being more ambidextrous. That's number one. Number two is, it's never a debate between man and machine, because it's man who drives the machine. So we need to invest in the talent. We need to make sure that we have talent which is ready for that VUCA world. And I think things will be changing much faster. So you need more skilled drivers. And if you need more skilled drivers, then we need to prepare them. And I think that's really where, if you ask me what is my challenge, is to find those skilled drivers, skilled leaders, skilled people who will be able to navigate as the world around us changes.
And that's a good note to end on.
Everything but drivers, though. Everything but drivers, because we'll have driverless cars.
Maybe. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.